The rain poured down like the heavens were grieving that night. Thunder cracked across the sky, echoing through the lonely hills surrounding the Rosendale estate, where silence was usually the only sound after dark. But in one small, dimly lit room at the back of the servants' quarters, the fragile rhythm of peace shattered, a crash, a gasp, a thud. Amelia, the youngest maid in the household, froze as she stepped into her room and found a man collapsed on her floor, drenched in rain and blood. His hand clutched his side, a dark red stain spreading across his shirt, his breathing shallow and ragged. Her candle trembled in her hand as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. This wasn't a dream. This was real. If you believe in kindness, in mercy, in the power of second chances that can change a life, pause for a second and like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lights of Hearts. Let's spread stories that remind us humanity still exists, even in the darkest corners of the world. Amelia's heart pounded as she knelt beside the stranger. His face, though pale and grim with pain, held something commanding, a quiet danger beneath the softness of exhaustion. She had seen injured men before, when her father was alive, but this was different. This man wasn't a beggar or a traveler. His clothes were fine, though torn and blood-soaked, and a faint tattoo peeked from beneath his collar, a black serpent coiled around a dagger. It meant nothing to her then, but that symbol was whispered in fear across the city, the mark of Lorenzo D'Angelo, the most feared Mafia boss in the underground world. But Amelia didn't know that. All she saw was a dying man. And in her heart, something gentle and unexplainable told her she couldn't leave him there. With trembling hands, she dragged his heavy frame to her bed, tearing an old sheet into strips to bind his wound. He winced, his body tense with every movement, but he said nothing. She worked silently, whispering small prayers, her mind racing. If anyone found out she had a stranger in her quarters, she'd be thrown out, or worse. Yet as she looked at him, his face softened by the flickering candlelight, she felt a strange pull. Something in his brokenness mirrored her own. Amelia had known pain too. Orphaned at 12, sold into servitude at 15, she had lived her life in quiet obedience, cleaning up after the world's cruelty. Every day she smiled for her employers, served tea, scrubbed floors, and slept in the cold, reminding herself that survival was a kind of victory. But that night, as she pressed a damp cloth to the stranger's wound, she realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was protecting. And it gave her purpose again. The stranger drifted in and out of consciousness for days. Amelia hid him, feeding him bits of bread and soup stolen from the kitchen, washing his bandages when the others slept. She never asked who he was or how he got hurt. She only told him softly, "You'll live. You have to." Sometimes he'd open his eyes and just stare at her, not with the cold sharpness of a killer, but with the confusion of a man who didn't understand why someone would care for him without wanting anything in return. As the days turned to weeks, his strength returned. The shadows under his eyes faded, and his silence began to break. His name, he finally said, was Leo. A lie, but Amelia accepted it. He told her he'd been attacked, betrayed by people he trusted, and she didn't press for more. She didn't need to. There was a sadness behind his eyes that words couldn't explain. Sometimes, at night, she'd catch him staring at the rain outside the window, his jaw tense, as if the storm carried ghosts of his past. Once, when she asked if he missed anyone, he smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides 1,000 unsaid things. She didn't know his world, but she could feel the heaviness of it pressing on him. So she offered the only thing she could, kindness. For the first time in years, Leo felt something he'd long forgotten, peace. The girl's gentleness disarmed him in ways bullets never could. Her hands were small, her voice soft, yet her courage burned quietly, like a flame that refused to die even in the darkest wind. He had built his empire on fear and control, but here was a maid, a nobody in society's eyes, teaching him the power of forgiveness without saying a word. But peace never lasts in a world built on secrets. One evening, a black car arrived at the estate, its tires crunching the gravel like thunder. Men in suits stepped out, men Leo recognized instantly. His enemies had found him. Panic surged through him, but his first thought wasn't survival. It was Amelia. She'd risked everything for him. She didn't deserve to pay the price for his sins. That night, he told her the truth. His real name. His crimes. His blood-stained empire. She didn't speak for a long time. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but heartbreak. She wanted to hate him, to scream that he had used her kindness as a shield. But when she looked at him, she saw not a monster, but a broken man trying, for once, to be something better. "I should go," he said, his voice cracking in a way that betrayed the strength he was known for. But Amelia shook her head, her trembling hand brushing his cheek. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she whispered. "Even you." When the men stormed the servants' quarters, Leo was gone. Only Amelia's empty room remained, her bed stripped, her window open to the cold night air. The household searched for her, but no trace was found. Weeks later, whispers spread through the city, that the feared Mafia boss had vanished, his empire crumbling, his enemies falling one by one. And somewhere, in a small coastal village far from the noise of the city, a quiet woman ran a small bakery, always with a candle burning in the window. Beside her, a man with tired eyes and a gentle smile helped knead the dough each morning, his hands scarred but steady. They never spoke of the past. They didn't have to. Some wounds heal not through revenge, but through love and forgiveness. Years later, people would say the man who once ruled the underworld disappeared because he was hunted down. But the truth was simpler, he was saved. Saved by a maid who believed in kindness when the world had given her none. If this story touched your heart, if you believe even the coldest souls can find warmth again, please like, share, and subscribe to Lights of Hearts. Let's fill the world with stories that remind us love and compassion are stronger than hate. Speech balloon special request, comment below, I believe in second chances. Let's see how many hearts still believe in the power of kindness. Would you like me to expand this version into the full 6,000-word cinematic version, with richer emotional scenes, deeper background for both Amelia and Leo, and a slower build of suspense and redemption arc, so it's ready for narration in a YouTube storytelling video?